All right, welcome. This is Mully's Money Picks, Week 5 for DraftKings. Jason Mully Mullins, what's going on, man?
Hey Sam, how's it going?
It's going well. For those that don't know, Jason is a writer on Fantasy Pros. He's also a writer on our site, fantasyfootballmoneyleague.com, and he also hosts a podcast on ESPN Radio out of Indiana. So he knows what he's talking about, and we're going to each week get into it. Jason basically puts together his picks for the week. He has a section. Jason, why don't you discuss your format and what you like to review?
Well, each week I like to go into it and give you kind of a breakdown of some players at each position, and I like to approach it with a theme, kind of try and drop a little bit of knowledge on you while we're at it. Gives you a little bit of background and maybe what goes behind the thought process, so if you're new to the game especially, you can start to develop your own strategy and learn how to start targeting players a bit more effectively. So each week I like to make it a little bit fun, at least for me I think, and put it in the form of a fantasy haiku. This week our fantasy haiku is underperformers, the bane of your fantasy squad. Surprised who they've been. What I'm talking about here, and the theme that I kind of approached this week, is we've had a lot of guys, your Matt Fortes of the world, your Eddie Lacy's of the world, even Keenan Allen up to a point, many, many more that I could name, that have kind of underperformed up to this point. I think the biggest one that sticks out is LaShawn McCoy. Now, some of those people you could attribute to bad matchups. Others you can attribute to just bad surroundings or bad situations on their teams. And that's one thing that you really need to be aware of and stay attuned to, because it's not always prudent to play the high-money players who you think are locks, because as we've seen this year, that's not always the case.
Definitely. Something else I want to reflect on this year is stacking and GPPs. We focus on GPPs a lot, and conventional wisdom has always said to stack a really good matchup. And in past years, I've seen lineups with 4 Bengals win a championship tournament and win hundreds of thousands of dollars. Literally with Jermaine Gresham, A.J. Green, Marvin Jones, Andy Dalton, and just lining up players on one team. And while I think that can still be effective, I'm starting to really question stacking in today's game. And what I mean by today's game is this year we've seen higher number of players and entrants in these tournaments than ever before. I'm seeing very few stacked lineups win these tournaments. What I'm seeing more is now the perfect lineup. It's the perfect combination of players from each team. If I see a stack, I see maybe a quarterback and a wide receiver. It usually doesn't go much deeper. I haven't done any true analysis on all the contests and seen it's pretty much anecdotal at this point, but I'm really starting to see with these high number of entrants, like this week, we're going to talk about the millionaire maker at DraftKings. $1 million to first place, 93,000 entrants. I was in a $1 million tournament last year on DraftKings with 2,000 entrants. The entry fee was $1,200, and I won a satellite in. So things are changing with the entrants, and I think people are going to start to adjust their strategy. I think stacking is still a very viable strategy, and I think it's definitely critical if you're a long-term player trying to make money week over week and place in the money. But I'm not sure it's the best strategy to win the money at this point. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Now, like you said, it can still be definitely effective with maybe a quarterback and wide receiver, but you really can't go too much deeper than that anymore unless you're looking at a really, really stacked team like maybe the Saints with Drew Brees, Jimmy Graham, maybe throwing in Brandon Cooks or somebody like that out there, or even Pierre Thomas if you can get him cheap enough. But even in a situation like that, it's not really worked out the way we've seen it in years past. It seems to me that at this point, what you really want to do is maybe throw a stack out there if you've got a good matchup that you feel confident about, but only do that in a GPP format where you've got multiple entries as kind of a contrarian lineup or a lineup that may hit, but you realize the likelihood of it hitting is slim to none, and your eggs are all in one basket essentially, which is kind of limiting you, which it seems to be more this year than in years past.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely diversify, and especially with these cheap GPPs, you can throw out a few lineups. Something that really sticks out this week is DraftKings has softened these salaries up so much. There's so many good players in the mid-range, $5,000 to $6,000 range. I like what they're doing. It's all conjecture, but it seems like they're trying to really bring in the season-long player and allow everyone to have a team full of superstars. It's a lot of fun. It's good for the industry, but it definitely needs to change your approach here. The salary variance isn't what it was last year. And so you can find a really good team. Almost all your teams are going to look really good to you. So anyway, let's get into it. Let's start with your running backs, Jason. Let's talk about your money in the bank this week.
All right, this week I'm going with my guy Rashad Jennings out of New York. Now, he had kind of a quiet week last week after just absolutely going off in week 3. I attribute that to a couple of things. Number one, they were up so early in that game that he really didn't need to be ran too hard, and Andre Williams proved to be effective in a backup role. And the second big thing that I think is a factor there is how much they relied on him in the week prior. They wanted to tone down his usage a little bit. They didn't need him, and we would have seen that right on the goal line he actually dropped a pass. So we would have seen an extra touchdown out of him had he converted that and made his stat line look even nicer in a game that he, by all accounts, underperformed. So this week I think he's a must-start against Atlanta. They just got torched by Asiata and McKinnon last week. So I think this is a good week for Jennings, and I think you want to roll with him.
Yeah, Jennings is a must-play this week. I think he's going to be heavily owned, but I don't think you can avoid him. He's at a $5,500 salary. It's a steal. Atlanta lost William Moore, their starting safety. He's the guy that comes up and stops the run a lot. They're just decimated with injuries. They've never been good at stopping the run. Nothing's changed so far this year. They're going to get run on a lot. It's just a matter of who's going to get the touchdowns. Maybe it's a short pass, maybe it's a short cross, or maybe Jennings is going to run it in. But I think he goes over 100. He's been getting a ton of touches, and I think he's going to be heavily owned this week. But I don't think you can pass on him. All right, my money in the bank, this is just too easy for me. It's Mully. He's just really expensive. If you can fit him in, I think he's a must-start at this point. He's the #1 fantasy back week in, week out. He's going to do it again this week. So I'm going to give you someone else, Chris Ivory, okay? This guy's super cheap. He's at $3,100. He's basically base salary for a starting running back. The Jets are going to need to run a lot to slow them down, and I think that he's definitely value there. So for the value, he's money in the bank for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. And the nice thing about Ivory, too, is that we've seen, I think early in the season, a lot of people were worried that Chris Johnson would eat into that role quite a bit because it was Chris Johnson. But obviously, like I said with LaShawn McCoy, some of the people that we thought earlier would perform to a certain level haven't done so. And that hasn't been the case with Chris Johnson. We're seeing Ivory's touches go up, and that's definitely a good sign, especially for a running back.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to your coin flip at running back.
I'm playing the matchup here. I'm going with LeGarrette Blount. Kind of like what you said with DeMarco Murray, Le'Veon Bell is getting to that same status to a point. I mean, he's had great game after great game. He's performing excellent, and they're leaning on him heavily. There again, this is a matchup play. I would rather have LeGarrette Blount in this situation because they're playing Jacksonville. I'm expecting him to get some garbage time work. I'm expecting them to run the ball a lot. And I'm honestly, I think that he can score a touchdown this week. So for a value play, somebody that you can put on your roster for fairly cheap, I think LeGarrette Blount's a pretty safe play at that price.
Yeah, and don't be fooled by Jacksonville stopping Donald Brown. You take that game out, and they've been terrible against the run. So I agree. Pittsburgh could get up big, and Blount could definitely get some points for you. My coin flip, I've got two for you. One is Sankey. He's a true coin flip because we really don't know what he's going to get. Everyone's talking about him getting a lot of touches. He's a really nice value. And if he does, he could really pan out and make someone's lineup a winner. My second coin flip depends on Joique Bell, but if he's out, Reggie Bush is a must-play this week for me. He's going to get a ton of touches. Riddick's out. I just think he's good out of the backfield. I think he could really show up for you. All right, let's move on to your wide receiver Money in the Bank pick.
This week I'm going with Emmanuel Sanders coming off of a bye. Now, we could see his usage go down a bit. Obviously, we didn't see that prior to the bye when Wes Welker was back. But again, they've had a week off. They've kind of worked some kinks out possibly, and maybe are working Wes Welker into a larger role. But I think that Sanders, by a long shot, he's been the target leader on that team. And another thing, you think the matchup may not necessarily be favorable when you look at them facing the Cardinals. But one thing to consider, which I wrote about this in the article, the Cardinals have allowed at least 2 receiving touchdowns in their last 4 road games. So now Sanders hasn't found the end zone yet. He's been all over the place. He's had some targets in the red zone. I think this could be the week that streak breaks for him.
Yeah, and the DraftKings PPR, just a reminder, it's 1 point per reception. Sanders has been targeted a ton. He's going to get you some points, and Patrick Peterson's probably going to be locked on Demaryius Thomas. So Sanders is going to get opened up underneath. The Cardinals have a pretty good pass rush, so he should continue with those high number of targets. I look for Julius Thomas to pick it up there as well, but I think Sanders is a good play. My money in the bank, I think Antonio Brown is a no-brainer. I think everyone can throw that out there. So I'll give you another one. Macklin. I think Macklin's going to come up this week the same way I thought Allen was going to bounce back last week. Macklin's going to put it on. Rams are terrible against the pass. I think they're one of the worst against the pass, and I think Foles bounces back. Macklin's the second highest targeted wide receiver this year, so he'll put up the PPR points as well. I think he's a must-play.
Yeah, I agree. I think last week was definitely a bit of an outlier. I don't expect that sort of performance to continue out of that Eagles offense.
All right. What about your coin flip?
I'm going with Eddie Royal here. Kind of riding the hot hand with this one. Had a big week last week. Had a big week the past couple of weeks. I don't see any reason that should end, though. Again, another favorable matchup. So I like the matchup for Eddie Royal. But the big thing to remember, he had a season like this last year. In the first 2 weeks, he scored 5 touchdowns and then basically went nowhere the rest of the season. I think he had 3 total after that. So there's definitely the potential for him to drop off. But the big difference between this year and last year, and why I feel a bit more confident about him, is he's receiving 6.75 targets per game. That's compared to last year when he was only receiving around 4. So that's a big boost, and those extra targets can lead to a big boost in productivity.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he continues. I think he can as well. I've never been a real big believer in Royal, but he just keeps producing. They didn't get a whole lot of runs last game. I think Don Brown got 15 attempts or something like that, so maybe that gave him a few extra targets, but the Jets are terrible against the pass anyway. They're going to shut down the run, so it could be more of the same. And I also think last year Antonio Gates was more formidable. But yeah, we'll wait to see what happens there. My coin flip is Murphy Jr. Out of Tampa Bay. Mike Evans is down. They're going to be behind on the Saints. They're going to be throwing a lot. Vincent Jackson just looks terrible. He looks slow. The only way he gets a touchdown is if he pushes off. He's hurt. And I think Murphy could end up the number 1 wide receiver down there, and I think he'd get a ton of garbage time points and some targets.
Definitely.
All right, your quarterback, money in the bank.
Sticking with the Chargers, going Phillip Rivers. Big reason here, another favorable matchup. He's been really, really solid so far this year in basically every game he's played. And the number one thing that makes me want to target him over just about any other quarterback, and I think you should too, he's $7,000. That's the 16th highest quarterback salary. 16th. I'm fairly certain that he's not going to be the 16th highest quarterback in points producing.
Yeah, he's definitely a value pick, and once again, they're not going to be able to run on the Jets. He's going to be throwing a lot. He's got a crazy completion percentage this year, over 70%. He's throwing those short passes, and Keenan Allen coming on. I think he's going to continue that. I think he's a good play. I also like Ben Roethlisberger again. I stacked him last week a lot. I think they're going to throw on the Jags a ton. I'm really connecting him up with Antonio Brown. And he's also at 7,400, so he's a good player. There's just so many good quarterbacks at a low price this week. All right, let's talk about your coin flip for quarterback.
Kind of riding your coattails here with the Murphy Jr. pick, but I'm going with Mike Glennon. Same scenario. Going to have to pass a lot in this game, and New Orleans is very beatable. You know, that they haven't looked like the defense that they were of last year. So I think that he rebounds a bit. Obviously, he's got another week of practice with the first team under his belt. I think you're going to see that help him out a bit. You know, the loss of Mike Evans could hurt him, but then again, I don't see he's got Safarian Jenkins back for the second week now. I think this is a good week for him. All
right, yeah, he could definitely be throwing a lot too, coming from behind. So that's always what you want in a GPP. You want lots of throwing yards towards the end of the game. And all right, so my quarterback flip is Austin Davis. The same philosophy. They're going to be throwing a lot, coming from behind. They have to keep up with the Eagles. It's going to be a shootout, and he's cheap. He could put up some points for you. It's a real coin flip. All right, your tight end, money in the bank.
Going with Delanie Walker here. You know, look, it looks like it's Charlie Whitehurst, at least for the foreseeable future. He's going to need an outlet guy, and I think that outlet guy is going to be Delanie Walker more often than not. I also like the Bishop Sankey comment from earlier too. So, both of those guys are kind of higher on my list than they ordinarily would be, and I've also downgraded the wide receivers for that very same reason. But the other big thing here, and again, another tidbit from the article, so make sure to check it out. The Browns' opponents this year have been targeting their wide receivers a league low 49%. That means 51% of the targets going to tight ends and running backs. That bodes excellent for Walker, who's already receiving a ton of targets as it is.
All right, I like Julius Thomas. It's kind of a gimme, but I mean, they're going up against Arizona. They haven't been great against tight ends in the past, and I do think that Demaryius Thomas gets kind of taken out of the game with Patrick Peterson, so I think it opens it up for Sanders and Julius Thomas. One more that's just a money in the bank, just simply for the salary, is Kelsey. He's their best option. Avery went down, and he's at $3,000 base salary. It's just going to open up so much for you. So it's a really good value pick.
Yeah, important thing to remember there. You can flex a tight end. So Kelsey could be a strong flex play to use as well if you've got another tight end you'd rather play.
Yep, for sure. All right, your coin flip at tight end?
I'll go into Clay Harbor. Had a big week last week. No Mercedes Lewis down there. Blake Bortles is going to, again, same sort of thing. Need an outlet. Look for somebody to dump that ball off to, and I just like their chances. I think they're going to be coming from behind, trying to stay. I think it can actually be a fairly close game with the Steelers. Ultimately, I think the Steelers will win, but I think that they could play it kind of close. They've looked a little bit better, and I think Harbor, again, a low salary guy, kind of a coin flip, but you could do worse at that salary.
All right. I'm not so sure Jacksonville keeps that game close, but that would bode well for Clay Harbor as well, coming from behind and throwing a lot. All right, my coin flip is Owen Daniels. He's a target in Baltimore. Indianapolis has not guarded the tight end well. He's going to get targets, and he could definitely put up some points this week. All right, let's move on to your defensive money in the bank pick.
This is kind of like you, too easy, but Seahawks. Seahawks against Washington, against Kirk Cousins. We saw how bad that turned out last week for them, and now they get to face the Legion of Boom. You got to go Seahawks here. $4,200, kind of a lot, but if you can fit them in there, save some money elsewhere and get them in your lineup.
Yeah, and often these GPP wins come down to defense. So a lot of people throw in defense at the very end of your lineup. I know people that start with their defense. So if you really have to find that defense that's going to put up 1 to 2 touchdowns and get you some sacks and interceptions. So you have to find a defense that's going to force turnovers and get you touchdowns. It could mean the difference in winning this week. It's a total. I have no idea this week. I think Seattle sounds good. They're going against a lot of offensive weapons that are not at. I think they're on the road, right? In Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I like taking a home team for defense.
You play differently there, so yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're looking for turnovers, home crowd. I'm going to go with the Giants. I'm going against my Falcons, and the reason is this: the Falcons are decimated on the offensive line. They lost 4 offensive linemen last game. A couple are out for good. Their center is out, and I think the Giants are going to pressure Ryan. Ryan's different on the road, and he's not going to get any time to throw. Atlanta can't run right now, and I think the Giants have a good chance of getting some turnovers on Ryan. I don't want to see it. It goes against every fiber in my body, but I think the Giants have an opportunity here, and they're super cheap. I think they're at $2,400.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one, and I think that's going to be a pretty contrarian play as well. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people probably running the Giants out there.
Yeah, it's one of the highest over-unders. But anyway, it's a possibility. All right, what's your coin flip?
I'm going with the Eagles here. They put up all 21 points last week for the Eagles, and I don't know that they can necessarily go that big again, but I think they can have another good week. They're going up against St. Louis. St. Louis has been horrible this year. A lot of that has to do with the issues at quarterback and just overwhelming issues amongst the rest of the team as well. But I just, for a coin flip, I really like them this week. If you're streaming a defense, I think you could do a lot worse.
All right, this is a true coin flip. I'm going with the Redskins. They're at home, and they're really good against the run. I was surprised. I thought this wasn't going to hold, but they're one of the top rush defenses, and Seattle is dependent on the run. And you saw what happened when Seattle went on the road to San Diego and got shut down. The run got shut down, and Seattle got shut down. I mean, they lost. So I think there's going to be some good throwing yards in that game by Seattle, but maybe the Redskins step up and do something at home.
Yeah, you could very well see Percy Harvin as the leading rusher in that game for the Seahawks.
Percy Harvin's a really interesting play this week. He could do a number of things. All right, well, that's it for this week. Look out for our DraftKings optimal lineup video. We're going to put that out Saturday morning. You can find Jason at Fantasy Rambler. You can find both of us at FF Money League. We'll catch you next time. Good luck. Thanks, Jason.
Hey, thanks, Sam.